Year with God, day 49. Today the reading is out of Matthew, where Jesus is talking. He's talking to the crowds, and he finishes off by saying that you have one teacher, and you are all students. It's out of Matthew chapter 23. Thought that I've had in the back of my head as I've been approaching this section on study. I really enjoy Scripture. I enjoy studying Scripture. I enjoy reading it. But at the same time, I've kind of had this nagging thought in the back of my head as I've been going through this particular section, and that is, I think the emphasis of Scripture is not so much for us to know it, not for us to have all the answers out of it, but rather for us to be transformed into the image of Christ through it. And so, as I've been approaching this, I've had this thought in the back of my mind, and I've got this preconceived idea. I've watched a lot of people who have studied the Scripture in order to gain knowledge, and that's been their purpose. They study it for that purpose, just to know more about it, not to encounter God or to become like God, or become like Christ. As I've been going through this, that's been a nagging concern in the back of my mind, because I don't think that's the right emphasis of studying Scripture. Well, today they actually address that directly. In the devotional reading there, the author was talking about how the priority of Scripture is, or how our approach to Scripture, that's the way I want to say it, how our approach to Scripture needs to be one of humility and of submitting to what Scripture is actually teaching us, and not one of approaching the Scripture in order to try to master it, but rather approaching it to be formed by it. And the connection they're making here is that Jesus, the author of Scripture, is our teacher, and the point is not to learn what he knows, but to become who he is, which is actually what discipleship really means. It's not to know what the Master knows, it's to become what the Master is. And they really emphasize that point, that the purpose of our study is to submit ourselves to Christ and what he's revealed in his Word. Not so much the intellectual mastery of it, but rather the spiritual transformation of it. So that actually addressed one of the big concerns I've had in the back of my mind this whole time, and that I've been trying to approach this this section of the book open-mindedly about in spite of. So that really addressed that concern of mine. As far as my spiritual practice today, I've been working through the book of Philippians. And the last 3 days, I've read it in its entirety every evening. Tonight, I decided to go a different approach and to try to delve a little bit deeper into it. And so what I did is I started in Philippians chapter 1, and I would read a short passage of it, usually a verse or two, sometimes not even a whole verse. And then I would try to paraphrase it, trying to get to the author's intent and what I think Paul was trying to say in that. And feel what I imagine him feeling, and trying to share the same thoughts as if I were sharing them with someone in that same type of relationship that Paul had with the Philippians. And then I would write out the paraphrase. I got about halfway through chapter 1. It was a time-consuming process. Very, very different perspective on it, however. Trying to put myself in Paul's shoes and communicate what it seemed like Paul was trying to communicate, I think gave me a different perspective on the text, and maybe even some different appreciations of what Paul is trying to say. Maybe some different insights and thoughts into what Paul is saying and who he's saying it to. So, got about halfway through chapter 1. I actually look forward to continuing that tomorrow night and maybe finishing off chapter 1. It's, like I said, paraphrasing, very different experience, something I've never done before, very thought-provoking, very, very challenging. So, those are my thoughts on day 49.